Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and listening into the podcast. I really appreciate you for taking time to listen to the podcast. And because you have been such faithful listeners, you helped us get ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts globally, according to Listen Notes. So thank you for doing that. And of course, we ask you to help us keep it going, rate, subscribe, review, and that will help us keep bringing you the podcast. All right, now I can't wait. I just can't wait to get into today's conversation. Today, I'm talking with Susie Schaefer. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Susie. Susie Schaefer is the CEO and founder of Finish the Book Publishing. All right, you had me at that. But anyway, Susie is known as a transformational book doula for cause publishing. She believes that books are a gateway to creating a movement. Whether writing a book that helps an author heal the past trauma or raise awareness for social change, Susie empowers storytellers to be a part of the global conversation and create a ripple effect for humanity. She's all about humanity, and I love that. And when she's not reading, publishing books, or writing award-winning screenplays, she can be found practicing yoga, meditating on the beach, or planning her next travel adventure. Welcome, Susie Schaefer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Robin. I appreciate being here today.
I'm so glad you're here. I can't wait to get into this conversation. We were talking before, and I was just really inspired by your story and just you as a person. All right. But you heard me talk, you read your sort of official introduction slash bio. But
Right.
why don't you tell us in your own words more about two things, who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So, who I am is someone who is multifaceted, I would say. I happen to have one of those brains that is very equally balanced with the left and right brain. So, I'm able to understand the business aspects, the technical aspects of publishing, as well as the creative side. So, that's really kind of who I am. In addition to publishing, I also do spiritual readings for people. And so I love tapping into that. Sometimes, especially when I'm working with authors, we find that they may have blocks that are coming up for them, whether it's in their writing or really just being able to kind of own it and be confident about putting their message into the world. And sometimes when we do readings for them, we uncover what those blocks are, and it allows them to go ahead and work through that process and heal that.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. And I think it's a unique mix. Well, I don't know if it's unique broadly, but unique to people that I know and talk to, that you have that balance of both the kind of left brain, right brain. And it sounds like your business combines both, even in what you're doing, your approach to helping authors get their work out and also helping them clear the inside. So it seems to fit just balance nicely in there. All right. So now tell us how you came to do this work.
Well, 10 years ago, I went through a divorce and I was living in Colorado at the time. And I had a friend who introduced me to independent publishing. And she said, Do you want to learn this? And I said, Absolutely. If you read on my website, I tell a little story about the fact that I've always loved books. I was an early reader as a child. And so I jumped right in. And as I was learning the publishing industry, I was working like 5 jobs, it was crazy. And then a few years later, I moved back to California to be supportive to my family. And then I decided to launch Finish the Book Publishing as my own brand. And we had a few years during COVID that things were a little iffy, like were business owners going to survive? And then coming out of that, we found a lot of people were doing the writing during COVID. And so all of a sudden we had this flood of business that was coming in with people who wrote their stories and shared their own unique experiences and then wanted to publish. And some of those experiences were, based on what the pandemic situation was for them and their families. But other people talked more about their own spiritual awakening or how did their business do during that time. So the publishing industry has really expanded a lot with the invent of independent publishing. And so I'm really grateful that I can be a part of that.
Yeah, it's I think, a true gift to people, to authors and the readers of their books that you're doing that work. Okay, so now let's go back to you said it started 10 years ago and someone said to you, would you like to learn this? Okay, you told us that you're a reader. So, okay,
Mm,
passionate reader. But my guess is most people, or at least many people who are passionate readers, if they got the same question posed to them, they wouldn't just jump in and say yes. So, what was the thing that drew you to publishing? You know what I mean? There's a little gap between being a reader and publishing.
right.
Tell us
Well,
about that.
I think I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. And, that's one of those things that if you don't love the fact that, being an entrepreneur has its own challenges, then it wouldn't be a fit for you. But the whole idea of me working in this industry and helping other authors publish their books, being of service, really being the guide, the book doula for people to share their own stories and become a storyteller in their own right. That was something that really appealed to me. And the idea of me being able to create a business and establish a legacy was something that I thought, you know what, I can do that. I want to do that. So, yeah. And I have to say, kudos to my best friend. She's the one who said to me, you could just start your own business. And I was like, what? Oh, I guess I could just start my own business. So, but yeah, it's that entrepreneurial spirit is something that you really have to have if you're going to undertake, creating a successful business.
Now, did you know that there was some storyteller part of you at the time that this, when she said to you, would you like to learn about publishing? Like, is there another part of you that you know that has been interested in storytelling, whether yours or others before this?
Absolutely. As a child, I loved escaping into books. For me, that was a pastime because, we growing up, I didn't get a lot of TV time. That just wasn't the way the world worked back then. But I could always pick up a book and could escape into another era, another town, into a fantasy land. And so for me, it was that whole creative aspect of just being able to be entrenched in some other world. And so, yeah, I think I've always been a storyteller, and just the ability to work with other people to tell their stories. And yeah, and typically, I started out working in both fiction, nonfiction, children's books. I do more nonfiction, spiritual books, faith based children's now. But even just the fiction books are always fun. It's always an interesting story. Some of my favorites are the ones that are true stories um, that do tell about a family legacy or about a traumatic event that turned the corner and created something beautiful out of that.
Yeah. So I see the connection between the storytelling and the reading in the publishing. Now let's see if there's anything, was there anything about little Susie who had any entrepreneurial, I mean, even if you didn't call it that back then, but do you remember anything that sort of kind of reflected who you are as an entrepreneur back when you were little Susie?
I don't really think so. You'd probably have to ask my mom that. But, you know, I can remember even when I worked in corporate America doing multiple, multi-level marketing types of businesses on the side, just
Oh.
so I can remember doing that a lot. But I don't know. Well, and, honestly, like my dad was somewhat of an entrepreneur too. My grandparents were. So I think that that's kind of ingrained in me. But sometimes when you go to college and you embark on your life, you do the things that you think you're supposed to do, which is, go to college, get a job, all the things, right?
Right.
And sometimes, becoming an entrepreneur may seem really risky and difficult. And back in the day, it wasn't as easy to become an entrepreneur and to launch a business. Today, literally anybody can do it, and there's tons of resources out there to help you along your own path.
Yeah, yeah. I'm intrigued by your story because I'm guessing there's somebody who is where you were. They were in corporate right now and they're thinking about it. So I'm hoping they're getting some clues from your story because you took some of your early passions, reading, and it made it a thing, right? And then there were some influences. If you think about your early work, even in corporate, business was hanging around your mind and you wanted to do something. So whether theirs is business or not, I'm hoping they get some clues to say, hey, I'm in corporate. What's the thing I'm always doing on the side? Or what's the thing I did when I was a little girl? Or what's the thing that is in my family that might be
Mm,
ingrained? So I'm hoping that they get that inspiration as you're sharing your story. But now that we've talked about corporate, let's say a little more about what you were doing and the thing that got you to the point of transition, because again, that might inspire someone who's on their way or
right.
thinking about it.
Yeah, so I had a number of years in corporate America. My background's in actually hotel and restaurant management. That's the why the pineapple, right? So that's a nod to my years in the hospitality industry, but it also represents hospitality, friendship, welcoming. And so it really, for me, is reflective of me helping other people get their books out into the world. But, I had a background in human resources. I worked in commercial television, radio. I've done voiceover work. So, yeah, I have a very eclectic background. And I think a lot of that was because I never found the thing that was the perfect fit until I was able to embark on this entrepreneur journey and work with authors and become a storyteller and all those things. So yeah, I think that lends a lot to it. But the ability to have not only financial freedom, but also the freedom of to travel and to see the world and to go meet with author clients and to go to conferences and all those types of things. I wouldn't have been able to have that type of freedom had I continued in corporate America.
You make an intentional decision to leave corporate to start a business, or was it just life circumstances and then you kind of fell into it?
It was a lot of life circumstances, and I always say, you get those nudges and sometimes you need a shove, you know. So the shove was my divorce. And moving from a rural area to back to the city and trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life. Here I was in my 40s and saying, okay, this is your opportunity to have a do-over, or a restart. And a lot of us in the middle years of our lives do go through that type of experience. And so I said, okay, what am I going to do? And so when I was offered this opportunity, I thought, well, this really feels like it's the thing, right? So yeah, so I was very fortunate that I had some things to fall back on and pick up and kind of just say, okay, we're hitting the restart button.
I love that. And another clue for people listening, you got excited when the opportunity was offered to you. It
Oh
sounds like
yes.
it, yeah.
Absolutely. I thought, wow, this is so different and so unique. And yet, because I was offered the opportunity and it came from someone that was a true friend, I felt supported in it. That I knew that I could still work my 5 jobs, to make ends meet, but still learn this industry and learn it from somebody who was established and credible and trustworthy.
Yeah, yeah. So that's another clue for people listening. If you're offered an opportunity and you're excited about it, don't ignore it. It could be the thing, and especially if it's coming from a trusted person or source. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that many times we fail to trust our intuition, and intuition's a big thing. Like when you don't trust that intuition, it's like it's the nudges, right? So when you don't trust your intuition, you're gonna come back and revisit that situation at some point again. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So now speaking of intuition, and you talked about, I'll call it for just a shorthand, the spiritual side of your work.
Mhm.
All right. So now we were looking at your career and looking back at the early you to see if there's reflection. So what about the spiritual side of your work? We know you were a reader, but was there any
Mhm.
inclination that you had that when you were a little Susie?
Yeah, absolutely. I was very intuitive as a child. I had a very active imagination. What I didn't understand is that a lot of my imagination when I was younger was actually clairvoyance, clairaudience. And so, we don't get taught those things in school. And a lot of times they are looked at as you're being a little too weird, or you have a very active imagination, right? Or you're too sensitive. Like that, we get a lot of that when we're growing up. And so we are generally taught to kind of shut down those abilities. And so we do. But I knew very, very young that I had something different about me. And so it wasn't until, here I was in my 40s. And after my divorce, instead of going to really work with a therapist, to work through the trauma of a divorce, I decided to work with a life coach who happened to be a psychic medium, and she was the one who told me. She said, you have gifts, and they're powerful. And I said, okay. So I started working on um, really honing those gifts and those skills, by doing my own readings, but I didn't tell anybody. For years I didn't tell anybody. I was like, oh, like, hiding in the closet kind of thing. And it was another colleague who I had done a reading for, and she says, why don't you, years later when I had my business, she said, why don't you take that and incorporate that into the publishing? And I thought, oh, people are going to just think I'm wacko, but really what happened is when I did that and I really became my true authentic self, that's when my business really started booming.
I love that, especially
Yeah.
that phrase, you became your true authentic self because you put
Hmm.
it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so now I'm going to go back a little bit too. You said, all right, after your divorce, you're working with a life coach who had these psychic abilities. Was it intentional that you found a life coach who had that, or it just so happened that the life coach you found had those abilities?
Well, I believe that there's no coincidences, that, right?
Okay.
We're
Yeah.
divinely guided. So I didn't know that at the time. I just knew that she was a life coach and she was a friend of mine and she was good at what she did. And so, but then as I learned that, I thought, wow, this is so cool, because I find this whole thing very, very interesting. Like, it was another thing that piqued my interest. I always had, as a child, even, I love the idea of, unicorns, dragons, and magic, right? So so here I am working with a life coach that is a psychic medium, and of course, she's encouraging me to work on my own gifts.
Y- Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, all right. So now you know the podcast is purpose, leadership purpose. And purpose is one of my favorite. It's my core passion, missions, the whole thing. Purpose, my purpose is purpose.
Right.
All right, so leadership purpose. And the podcast is for women who are high achievers. Um, Most of them or many are in leadership roles or other roles, just leading their own lives. But the things that they have in common, one or more of these things, they're responsible. Um, they are good at a couple things. They are ambitious in a positive way. They are the one in their professional role that people come to and ask them questions, whether it's related to their role or not. And they're the ones in their home life and community, neighbor, friends. People come to them and ask them for their advice, whether they
Mhm.
know anything about it or not. They're just the one, right? And so they're the one that's doing all that. So I thought, well, who supports them while they're supporting everyone else? So I thought this was a good kind of goal for the podcast. And then I thought, especially if they're at a place where they checked all the boxes of success, they did everything what you should do, maybe go to college, get the job, or whatever their path was set out for them. But now they're feeling like they have this level of success, no matter what level it is, but they're successful, but unfulfilled, and they
Mhm.
want more meaning and purpose. But they don't want to blow up their whole life or risk everything they built. So I thought, well, maybe they can just get glimpses, which is what I was doing when you and I were talking, some nuggets that they can get along the way to help them kind of in their journey. All right. So now with that woman in mind, what's something you could say from it in any area of your life and work? Because like I said before, I believe no matter what nugget we get from a conversation, it'll help us, right? Okay. So what would you say to her from your personal life or professional life uh, for where she is in her journey that might be encouragement or advice?
Yeah. I would say take a leap of faith. Whether it is you want to go for that promotion in your job, or whether you say, you know what, I'm tired of the 9 to 5, I want to become a business owner. Just have faith, know that you can do it, and just take that leap of faith and just go for it. um, I don't regret at all the difficult times that I went through, especially when I was establishing my business, because let me tell you, there were lean times. There were times when I was thinking, how am I going to pay the bills, right? um, I don't regret that because there were lessons that I learned through that experience that taught me a lot about myself, but also about my self-worth. You know, a lot of us, especially women in our mid years, we have a lot of worthiness wounds. So it taught me a lot about that and how to heal that. So that's what I would say is just, you know, take that first step and just trust that it's going to be okay. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, I couldn't help but pick up on the fact that you said you learned some lessons in the lean times. What's a lesson that pops to your mind, if any?
That it doesn't matter how nice your house is, the kind of car you drive. Uh, what matters is you have a roof over your head, a way to get around town, even if it's taking the bus, right? Um, that as long as your bills are paid and you're maintaining your own sovereignty and independence, that is the most important thing, and safety as well, and making sure that you're safe,
Mhm.
right? Just take care of you. Like you are the most important thing. They tell us this every time we get on an airplane. They tell us to put the mask on ourselves first, right? But yet we don't do that in our everyday lives. We try and take care of all the other people. We become people pleasers, all that stuff. And quite frankly, those don't serve you. It's really about you taking care of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if all your physical needs are met for a person, do you think it's important that they have purpose? If so, why? If not, why not?
Yeah, purpose is I think extremely important, because if you don't have purpose or a mission in life, and you don't have something that you're working towards, a goal, something, then your day to day is going to become quite boring. You know, it really is going to be just the same old thing. When I work with people, a lot of times I ask them if they've pulled their astrological birth chart, because your birth chart is a fingerprint. It's very unique to you. And so the one thing that I encourage them to look at is their north node. You know, you'll have your sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign, all that fun stuff, which are important. But the one thing that I think is critical for people to understand is, what is your north node? What is the placement of your north node when you were born? Because your north node is your mission and purpose in this lifetime. And so if you can connect with that and say, okay, what are the things I love doing? Right? Maybe it's gardening. Maybe I love gardening, but I'm not making any money at it. But then you suddenly look at your north node and it's in alignment with working in nature and plants and creating food sources and beautifying landscapes, anything like that. Then you realize, oh my gosh, I need to move my career, my sustenance for resources like money, like a housing, like a car, like food, you know, I need to move into that area versus working a job that is kind of killing my soul, right? So that's a big thing. And
Yes.
I think, you know, your middle years of your life are the opportunity for you to do those things, because
Yes.
it's okay to shift gears. Totally okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're speaking right to the heart of the people who are listening in when they're in a position right now where the work that they're doing is killing their soul, to use
Right.
your phrase. So I think you spoke right to the heart of people. All
Yes.
right. You have such a vast and very, very inspiring and curious journey, career journey to this point, and I think it's just amazing that you're sharing this with us. But before we let you go and tell people how they can be in touch with you, is there anything that I didn't get a chance to ask you that you want to talk about, or anything that pops in your mind, or one more thing? If not, it's
Hmm.
okay, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity, just in case there was something bubbling up for you.
I can't think of anything in particular. I would say that, you know, when people embrace the woo, I use the woo as in woo woo, as it stands for wise old owl. So go embrace your own woo, your own wise old owl, and figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. And then just go do it.
Hey, thank you, Susie, for that woo, that moment of
Yes.
woo,
The moment of woo.
moment of
Yeah.
woo. All right, so I'm imagining some people might want to know, well, how can I be in touch with Susie? How can I follow you? So where would you direct them to?
So the best place to find me is on my website. It's finishthebookpublishing.com. super simple. It gives you the background, a little bit about my story. If you decide that you'd like to book a reading with me, you absolutely can do that right there on my website. You can also schedule a consultation if you have a book in you. Would love to chat about your book. So there's a whole bunch of information there, and that's the best place to find me.
Okay, tell us the link again, the website you're on.
It's finishthebookpublishing.com.
I mean, that says it all.
Yeah, pretty simple.
Yes. Susie, thank you so much for taking time. I know you had a very full day today and you still have more. So thank you for taking time out of your day to share your wisdom and your heart with us. Really
Well,
appreciate it.
thank you, Dr. Robin, and thank you for serving such a wonderful community.
I'm glad to hear you say that. You're welcome. All right, everyone. I'd love to hear your response to this episode and or any comments you have about the podcast. I ask you to follow me on LinkedIn. So go ahead and get a connection request. I'd love to hear your thoughts at Robin L. Owens, PhD, at Robin L. Owens, PhD. That's LinkedIn. And if your other channels are your favorite ones, I'm over there too. Same thing at Robin L. Owens, PhD. And we always have a resource for you at the podcast website, leadershippurposepodcast.com, leadershippurposepodcast.com. So I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin.